Immigration has been a topic of ongoing debate in the United States since early in its inception. Who should be allowed into the country? Who should be kept out? What effect will immigration have on society? There are many reasons people choose to come to the United States of America. Ultimately, it is to make a life better for themselves and their families. Reasons span the gamut from religious freedom, escape from war, poverty, and oppression, to educational opportunities and economic advancement. All of these reasons are valid, but arguably the most important reason is employment and financial gain, in order to provide for one's family and improve one's quality of life. In the late 19th century, the vast majority of immigrants came to the United States in order to find jobs. America was seen as the land of economic opportunity, where people from many European countries, including Poland, came to find a better way of life for themselves and their family. The large-scale influx of European immigrants to the United States from the 1880s through the 1900s reinforces the argument that economic success was the primary motivator to move to America and begin a new life. A closer, more intimate look at one Polish-American family will illustrate how life in the United States has offered opportunities and success for modern generations. This is the Brach family. Their history will offer a more personal example of Polish immigrants who traveled across the Atlantic to start a new life in America. The story of the Brach family in America spans 6 generations. It is the story of Jan Canty Brach, whose journey took him to the coal mining town of Frackville, Pennsylvania, and eventually to Philadelphia. The Brach family adapted well to American society, while at the same time holding on to the culture and traditions of their Polish heritage.
It was pretty amazing to learn that all of my ancestors came over between the years 1888 and 1912, and I guess that was the big migration from Europe, either due to famine or poverty or what have you. And and there's from that, there's totally different stories. Like we have our great-great-grandparents Jan Canty Brach and Apollonia Brach, Apollonia Rutana Brach. They each came over in their 20s. Jan Canty came over in 1891, and Apollonia came over in 1894. And they came over and they were lured over to Frackville, more specifically New Boston in the Poconos, which is a mining town. I guess he was lured here in the prospect of work. Probably the situation was they didn't have much work where he was, and they planned to come to America and make their fortune, or have a better life. Jan Canty worked in the coal mines for I guess the first 20 years that he was here, until his family saved up enough money to move and buy a home in Philadelphia. And then from that point on, he worked in the armory in Philadelphia. And whereas the converse of that, Haromine Wilgozinski, who was up on the Brach line as well, he came over in 1912 with his second daughter, and then 3 months later, he sent for the rest of his family. In total, he had 11 children. And the youngest one being 5.5 months. So he was a farmer in Poland, some part of Poland, and to give that up and to bring his whole family over, especially with children so young, the times must have been really tough, to give up everything that you knew for something totally different, whereas he was a farmer living in the country, and then he moved to Philadelphia, and now he's living in the city, and raising a family of essentially 11 children. So that's where you get like 2 totally different stories that of why people have come to this country.
Immigration from Poland occurred in 3 waves. The first wave was made up of economic migrants who arrived prior to 1929 in search of better jobs and a better way of life. These first-generation immigrants experienced a decrease in their social and occupational opportunities and were often the targets of racial stereotyping and abuse. Social and financial opportunities came with the second and future generations of Polish Americans born in the U.S. The second wave was in the aftermath of World War II, where Poles fled their war-torn country in hopes of starting a better life. Finally, the third wave were new immigrants, who moved to the U.S. to escape communism in pursuit of economic stability and freedom from oppression.
Well, I grew up like kind of in the farms and stuff. It was not much people like in here. It was just like all different cultures, peoples in here and stuff. It was a little bit, and you know how in here like the people keeps dogs inside the house. We did not did that in the Poland. I came in 1977. I came to Bridgeport, Connecticut. My grandmother took me, and then I went to the school for about 2 years, and then I got married in 1980. And it was kind of hard to live with my sister. I can still just see her crying where I left. And since that day, I never see her. We talk a lot. I mean, she got married and, you know, she's got kids. And my brother got married and he's got kids. You know, everybody's got a family and stuff.
But why were so many people eager to leave Poland? There are a multitude of reasons, but perhaps the most prevalent was the fact that for over 100 years, the Poles were a people without a country. From 1795 to 1918, Poland was divided up into three partitions: Russian, Prussian-German, and Austrian. Polish identity, culture, and traditions were now being influenced by three separate ruling powers. Growth of the German industrialization meant that Poles living in the German partition benefited the most. However, life in the Russian partition was oppressive, and in the Austrian partition, the economy stalled, leading to as many as 50,000 deaths each year from malnutrition and starvation. Compared to the Western world's standard of living, Poles ate less, owned less, and paid twice the amount of income tax as Westerners. Daily living conditions were horrible and tensions ran high, creating bloody peasant uprisings and conflicts between religious and ethnic groups. Poles needed a way out, so they migrated to the German partition, other European countries, and America. The division into three partitions crippled the Polish economy. The size of the Polish markets were smaller. The smaller partitions were more vulnerable to conquest, thus deterring placement of any large-scale industrial, transportation, or communication centers within them. The Polish people were living without a country. Poverty, starvation, and the desire for independence led many to immigrate to America. Between 1870 and 1914, over 2 million Poles left their homeland for opportunities in different countries. As the Industrial Revolution took hold throughout Europe, peasants and poor farmers unable to find work were convinced they could find work and a new life in America. New steamships designed specifically to carry passengers allowed immigrants to make the trip to America in about 10 days, as opposed to the older sailing ships that could take up to 3 months.
Usually, some research I've found that once one Polish American comes over, they write back to the family and say, "There's work here. You can get jobs here. You know, if so and so son comes over, we'll look out for him." You know, a lot of times it wasn't. A lot of times, you know, kids in their 20s came over, and they came over with the intent of meeting up with someone. It wasn't always the case, but usually there was someone from that village that, you know, they could stay with and board with until they made enough money to get their own place.
The pioneer era was ending and the industrial period was beginning. Many immigrants found jobs in factories, steel mills, and coal mines. The language barrier and lack of cultural understanding meant that Polish immigrants had to start at the bottom, taking on the most menial jobs. The first measure of economic success was being able to feed themselves and their families, something they had struggled to do in Poland. Polish immigrants had to adapt from their peasant farm economy to the industrialized West. Some adapted well, while others did not.
To earn money is much easier here than in Poland. Man is free here and knows no master.
Some suffered many hardships and believed that there was no freedom in America. Economic success wasn't easy, but was attainable through hard work and perseverance. A Polish immigrant living in Chicago wrote to his mother, "Nowhere is life a delight. Misery everywhere. In America it is no good either, but still better than in Poland." From 1880 to 1920, the largest influx of immigrants to the United States were Polish, Italian, and Jewish. They entered a nation which was economically thriving and in much need of European labor. Consumerism had taken hold in America, and the capitalist market economy was in full swing. But not everyone was thrilled that so many immigrants were pouring into the United States. Lawmakers and nativists began to worry that the influx of European immigrants would hurt the U.S. economy. In 1888, the Ford Committee report stated
that this country cannot properly assimilate the immigration now coming to our shores. Generally speaking, the class of immigrants who have lately been imported and employed in the coal regions of this country are not such, in the opinion of the committee, as would make desirable inhabitants of the United States. They are of very low order of intelligence. They do not come here with the intention of becoming citizens, their whole purpose being to accumulate by parsimonious, rigid, and unhealthy economy of sum of money, and then return to their native land.
The Ford Committee report gained much support, and by 1892, both the Democratic and Republican parties campaigned for immigration restrictions. Organizations such as the Immigration Restriction League and the American Federation of Labor fought for restrictions, claiming,
"Cheap labor, ignorant labor, takes our jobs and cuts our wages."
There was also a growing fear of increased crime rates and slums popping up in major cities. In 1906, the United States Immigration Commission was formed to study immigration. The data collected concluded that there was a difference in European immigrants labeled old and new immigrants. Restrictions on new immigrants was demanded by economic, moral, and social conditions. This faulty data fueled the stereotype that Polish immigrants were physically strong, but of low intelligence and poor moral judgment. In 1921, the first law restricting European immigration was passed. The First Quota Act of 1921 limited the number of immigrants to the United States, while specifically targeting immigrants from southern European countries. The law cut the immigration totals almost in half, from an average of 625,629 between 1901 and 1920 to 357,803 afterward. Each ethnic nationality was limited to 3% of the number of people from that ethnicity living in the United States in 1910. This was a tactic clearly designed to keep out immigrants from southern European countries. Polish immigrants were now limited to 25,827. In 1924, the National Origins Act further cut immigration totals from 357,803 to 164,667. Immigration from Poland to the U.S. was now limited to 5,982. In 1927, Polish immigrants were listed as the fifth largest group to enter the U.S. behind Germany, Great Britain, Ireland, and Italy. The low immigration rate meant that Poles living in the U.S. became more and more disconnected from the culture, religion, and customs of their homeland. Over the years, Polish communities living in the United States distinguished themselves from other ethnic communities. They did not try to strictly hold on to traditional Polish ways, nor did they try to completely assimilate themselves into American culture. Instead, they created a new hyphenated identity, a Polish-American identity.
I'm very proud that I am from Polish heritage. Very, very proud. My name is Joan Pijanowski, and I am John Pijanowski's daughter. And John Pijanowski was related to Teresa Brach. I grew up in New Jersey, out in the sticks. I mean, a dirt road off a dirt road, hand pump, outhouse, kerosene heater, while my father was building the house around us. So he was very talented too. And so then the rest of his family, which was a big family of sisters and brothers, would always come out. So I had all my cousins growing up with me every weekend when it was really nice weather. And then, like Christmases, we all went into Philadelphia and did the rounds. My father called it the rounds, and we visited all my cousins.
As far as traditions that we still do today, we're still members of the Catholic Church, and we still, on special occasions, make those special Polish foods like pierogies and kibasi and głonki and stuff like that.
I thoroughly and absolutely enjoy our, as my husband would call it, peasant food, since he's not Polish. But the thing is that I love it, and I can eat it for breakfast, lunch, and dinner.
The hope of a better job and a better life has filtered down through the current generation of Brachs. Their Polish heritage has allowed them to stay connected to their traditional food, religion, and culture of Poland. The tough decisions and hard work of their ancestors has allowed them to become educated, enjoy life, and see dreams become reality.
I think, growing up in the United States, we have a lot more opportunities presented to us. As far as, where we can go, what we can do, who we can become. I think, where the reason a lot of our ancestors came over here is because they were very limited. There wasn't many opportunities. And in some cases there was, famine or hunger, or, they were living in poverty. And they came over here, and all they wanted was an opportunity, and they got the opportunity to work and make something of themselves. And as you follow their children, grandchildren and great-grandchildren, you go down the line. Each one of them had different and unique lives and careers that they probably wouldn't have had if they had stayed in their own country.